Hey, y'all. Dana Brooks, Basic Brooks, EmPower Hour, EmPower Plant. I cannot even stay on this seat. I am fired up today. We're talking about Britney B. And you know what the B stands for because I'm furious about it. If you've been following this at all, you are wondering how in the world can someone get total control over a human being, not just their money, although we need to speak to that, sexism, hashtag sexism, but her personage, her what? So listen, we brought it to you today. We've got Twyla Sketchley, elder law attorney. And when you say elder law, that's not just dealing with things that affect elderly people. We're dealing with things that affect people who become incapacitated for some way or another. Twyla, welcome. Give us the 411 on you, and thank you for being here and agreeing to talk me down to a reasonable level because I'm furious after I watched Britney versus Spears. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me, Dana. I am a board certified elder law attorney. My expertise is in elder law. What that encompasses is assisting people in planning for incapacity, accessing benefits, advocating for individuals who may have a disability but don't need a guardian. So that's what I do day in and day out.
Now, what is it? I just want to ask you real quick so we can tune people in and tell them what they're about to experience. What we've been talking about a conservatorship.
Yes.
In California, that's what Britney's dealing with. And in Florida, I guess that's a guardianship. Can you just tell us a little bit about those two things before we ramp up and introduce everybody else?
Yes. So everybody is hearing the word conservatorship. In Florida, we call it a guardianship. It's the same thing, the same concept. What you need to know is that there are 50 states, and each state has its own guardianship and conservatorship laws. So in Florida, we call it a guardianship. And there is a process in every state to be subjected to a guardianship. There should also be a process to get out of a guardianship. There are regulations, or at least there are supposed to be, on the actions of your guardian. I'm going to use the word guardian even when we're talking about conservatorship today, just because that is the language that anybody in Florida is used to using and hearing. But they're interchangeable in this case.
Thank you so much. I've got a million questions, as does everybody else, but I want to first get to something that we're going to need today more than we have in a while, and that is Rose. Rose Caswick, where are you, and what are we having to drink? I know I'm having my own. It's a pink champagne, just Britney. This little girl was part of my little girl's childhood, and I just want to protect her. And Rose, I know you would fight to the death for her. What do you have for her today?
Yeah, I was struggling with what to do for Britney, and I was thinking something pink and girly, and then I read that I was looking, what does she like to drink? She likes Starbucks pink drinks. So I was looking up recipes, how to make a copycat, and then I said, why am I making this hard? I'm going to get some pink drinks, and I'm going to put some vodka in them for fun, and we're going to have that.
Just so simple, always looking for ways to save the busy modern woman time. And I appreciate that from you, Rose.
Through that today. No blenders for me today.
Yeah, no, I'm here for all of it. Who else do we have on the panel today? We've got Kia.
Hi, everyone.
Listen, y'all, we just came back from DC. Kia was up there with us, and we decided to do a nighttime monument tour. And we hired this driver. This poor guy coming out of left field didn't know what was up. He's driving Basic Brooks, and everybody, our entourage, all over DC. And every time we take a picture, Kia's going, hashtag free Britney. Apropos of nothing. But we were just like, this is so wrong. And so Carrie Roan, she's not here. She's in Seattle with a client. She's spending some time with the client, their family, and getting to know them. But anyway, she would be here, and she's the one who turned us all onto this. I knew this was going on with Britney, but I was like, I didn't really know how awful it was. You were dialed into it. What are your thoughts on all this today?
I think my biggest thoughts was going down to the sexism part. You know, they put her on birth control so early.
What?
And it had nothing to do with really the sexual part. It was just like controlling her. Yeah. Then we have so many men, and I know we're going to go deeper into this, but it's just so many different components of what this, young lady was going through. And I truly was stuck on the sexism part, that I have not yet seen them do this to any other man other than the ones that get really sick. You know, I think it was Tony Bennett that they did that too, but that was necessary because he needed that help.
And temporary. As long as you need America is founded on freedom and liberty. You're supposed to put people in the least restrictive environment possible to attain, the immediate goal. And no one's always crazy. Get real.
Correct. Which then, of course, also brought you back to thinking, and I know a lot of people don't like to touch on this, but America in itself wanting to be in control of women, minorities, and it just keeps going. So it's like, it's a snowball effect. So that's what made me kept thinking, I get it. I understand why this girl was doing the things she was doing, because she has never had a childhood. She has never fully been able to develop. She has never fully been able to do anything, even down to buying a car. I got so ecstatic when I bought my first car at 21 without my parents. She hasn't even driven yet, but she's had kids. It's crazy to me.
Crazy. And all those people, scores, if not hundreds of people, have made money off of her after she's been declared too incompetent to even be able to pick her own lawyer. We're going to get into it with Twyla.
Think about it.
Go ahead.
We also talked about her net worth. How in the world is that only her net worth?
The performers make the most money. You can't tell me she's only worth $60 million. Are you kidding me?
No way. No way.
Twyla, you got a lot of explaining to do. Yeah, who else is on this panel with me? Who else? Let me see. I don't have the best view.
That's us.
Is that all of us? Okay. Yeah. Twyla, back to you, lady. You've got the mic.
Okay.
Or how about this? Orient the viewers that we have roped in by the whole Britney thing, and then just tell us more about, like, in reality, what really happens.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let me start by saying that guardianship is considered an action of last resort. What that means is, when you're pursuing a guardianship over someone, it is because there is no other way to protect them or assist them. And I don't mean because you think they're making a bad decision, because we all have to remember, we get to make bad decisions.
You get to lose all your money. If everybody who got a hold of an asset didn't,
you get to do what you want with it. Yeah, I mean, exactly what I'm thinking is, you get to make your own bad decisions. No, unless you become a ward of the state or something, become destitute, that's not anybody else's problem but yours until that point.
They call it rags to riches and back to rags again for a reason. Now, I would love to give the resources and assets to anybody who does suddenly come to money without the ability to understand how best to utilize it. I would love to be able to help those people, but we're Americans. That is that's at the core of what it is to be an American, is to have the liberty and the freedom to fuck up your own life.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And when we are looking at somebody's decision-making process, when we're looking at somebody who's making bad decisions, we're looking at whether or not there is a maybe medical or physical or developmental reason why they can't make bad decisions. And we base that on the ability to gather information, process that information, understanding the consequences and benefits, and make a decision based on that. They can make a really bad decision, but if they understand that it's a bad decision, they get to make it. And we can't stop them simply because we don't like the decision. Right.
And we don't get to just interject ourselves in every decision and challenge it.
Yes.
Just because somebody might appoint us as a conservator or a guardian, and we make money off of that. And Twyla, please speak to this, the guardianships and conservators, because people come to me constantly saying, how are these people, these strangers, able to make this kind of money off people? Is there not some sort of vetting process? Is there not some sort of, credential they must have? And so many times what I'm hearing and what I'm learning is, no, there isn't.
Well, and that is different in Florida than some other states. So in Florida, if you are a professional guardian, which would be somebody who comes in and manages money, makes personal decisions for someone who has been adjudicated incapacitated. That means a court has found them incapacitated, and I can tell you how that process would work in Florida.
Okay.
But that professional guardian has to take 40 hours of training, pass a test, pass a criminal background check, pass a financial background check, take continuing education, is subject to rules that they can be disciplined for violating. That's a professional guardian. In Florida, anybody who has more than 2 guardianships of people who are not your family members has to go become a professional guardian, or they cannot be appointed on subsequent guardianship. So in Florida,
let me stop you there. May I?
Yeah.
So if I just, as a family member, am a guardianship of my cousin and my aunt, so that's 2, and I want to do it for my grandmother, I need to go become certified as a professional guardian?
No, that's a family member. You can be the guardian of all 10 siblings. What you can't be is guardian of 10 of your neighbors. You can't be guardian of
gardener
without obtaining the certification once I'm doing, 2 or more. Okay.
Yes. So then every guardian in Florida is required to have an attorney represent them. There's some very minor exceptions, but that's way down in the weeds. And so for the general rule, every guardian in Florida must have an attorney representing them.
Okay.
And that's because Florida acknowledges that guardianship is a complex process dealing with someone's life, liberty, and money.
Yes. The most essential parts of your being.
Yes. And in some cases, you may not use a professional guardian as a person. You may go to a trust company or a bank and ask them to manage the money. Because you may have somebody who gets $5 or $10 million in a personal injury settlement in a catastrophic accident. And that would be better managed by a large financial institution that can access money management and things like that. So that was one of my things in the Britney guardianship. Dad became guardian over this multi-million-dollar empire.
Upon demonstrating what competency?
And that was my concern. And now in Florida, there is a preference.
And he was an absent father to boot.
Yes. In Florida, as in many states, there are laws that prefer family members over professionals. Okay.
I gotcha.
Oh, by the way, in Florida, nobody with a felony history can be a guardian.
Right.
Nobody who has abused or neglected a child, or abused, neglected, or exploited an elder can serve as a guardian. So the fact that there was some domestic violence between Britney's parents may have also disqualified him from
and this man likes the sauce.
Yes.
Okay,
that is my understanding.
Hear from me for a minute. This young woman, once it was all done, and you could speak to this, obviously, Twyla, the sentiment, but do you understand that this young woman, in order to get her paltry, and I do believe it's paltry, something like $6,000 a month for her expenditure needs, that's minimal. I mean, no. To get that, she had to be subjected to drug tests and alcohol tests. But yet the man who had no history whatsoever being able to manage a multi-million-dollar estate of an entertainer, 0 experience, with a drinking problem himself, witnessed, demonstrated, he doesn't have to.
Nope.
What the fuck?
That's a really good question. And that's part of the problem in appointing guardians. And like I said, there are 50 different schemes in the United States. One for every state. You need to give the least preference to family. You need to give the most preference to the person who is the most objective. Hands, Well, and there are people that believe that only family members should take care of their family members. And I have a couple hundred guardianships. The vast majority of guardians are family members, and they do a really good job.
But they don't have, they're not in charge of 3 point, how much,
60 some million dollars,
$3.5 million a year
Yep.
off of a one of a kind, entertainer with
Yeah.
no experience whatsoever to do. I can balance my mother's checking account. I can keep her bills paid. I can make sure she has the best health care. Anybody can do that. We would do that. But that's not the same as saying this child you really kind of didn't know much at all about, who just is a superstar, and you're all of a sudden, Morgan Stanley. I don't see it. I don't see it.
No, I agree with you. And that's another issue that I take up with the conservator situation. As an attorney who represents guardians, professionals, family members across the board, in a situation where someone is coming into or has a great deal of money, we generally, if they're going to serve as guardian, we generally recommend that they get court authority to bring in a good financial advisor. Oftentimes we'll do co-guardians with a financial institution so that there is that depth of knowledge and understanding.
Yes. And objectivity. Rose, you and I handle some catastrophic injury cases at Basic Brooks. And a lot of times, these are people who come into a large sum of money who are in no way prepared for it, because it's got to last them so long, because that's what a jury or, the insurance company has determined is the value of what they have lost
for life
over time. And so many times with Rose and me, we decide to go with an objective guardian. A lot of times we go with retired judges because we know that they have a cloak of authority. But we also know there's a lot they have at stake if they screw this up. You know what I'm saying? I'm looking for assurance. I'm looking for insurance, assurance. I'm looking for competency. I'm looking for objectivity to take care of my client, because I know that my client, bless their heart, has had something happen to them they're not anticipating and in no way prepared for, and they're going to have other people coming out of the woodwork. That I do appreciate about what Britney's father was trying to do. She had this bodyguard, she had this paparazzi dude who became a good close confidant, but just because that's how they came into her life doesn't mean they're necessarily horrible. This is what I learned one time. Just because you're a mark doesn't mean the grifter can't fall in love with you.
So true.
So I understand why she would be conflicted very, very much. And I understand why a parent would want to look out for her. But I also necessarily see how a parent would be the absolute worst person to do it. What do you say when that comes up in your world? When the parent would otherwise make sense, but for this very unique situation going on?
Well, and there's a lot of things that, so first of all, in Florida, Britney would still have been able to socialize with people. She would still have been able to get a telephone, call people. There are instances where contact with people is limited, phones are removed, but in the vast majority, and I'm not saying that you can't go through the umpteen million people in Florida and find one bad guardianship case.
Of course.
But
Twyla, why? Tell us what she was restricted with. I think we're operating from a base of knowledge that we all have, that the people watching us don't. Tell us what it means to have a guardianship or a conservatorship of the person, not just their damn money. As I understand, this man, if she was out with her friends and he didn't bring his daughter back when he wanted to, he goes, "You just kidnapped me. I am her. You kidnapped me. I'm calling the cops. You will be arrested."
And that's kind of how that works. That's a little dramatic because law enforcement is like, "Hey, dude, enough already."
Yeah, get real.
But so when you get a guardian, if you get what's called a plenary guardian, which is what Britney appears, well, that's plenary is person and property. Okay. You can also have a plenary of the person, which means that person makes all the decisions. In Florida, we have a list of rights in our statutes, ones that you will never lose regardless of an adjudication of incapacity, ones that can be removed if you can't exercise them, but cannot be delegated to a guardian. Employment is one of those. And two, there's a limited list of rights that can be taken from an individual who's adjudicated and delegated to a guardian, okay? So if you have a plenary guardian of the person, this person is making medical decisions for you, social decisions.
Like birth control, like sterilization.
Well, and that in Florida, you would, in order to force someone to be sterilized, you would have to get a court order for that.
Well, apparently they didn't. She couldn't have a child. She's 41 now. I mean, I hope they harvested eggs. I hope they did something to preserve her right to have the best, healthiest child. I just can't even believe this. This sounds like imprisonment. I can't believe it. You know, I can't.
Yeah,
I can't.
Well,
and thank God, this is, everybody makes fun of us for living in Florida. This is the one good thing, apparently.
Well, and there's a lot of states, and now there are sometimes, you know, guardians will use a carrot approach. Hey, if you go do this, we'll give you X. Or, you know, you don't.
So it looks like consent.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So that's, and they can decide now in Florida, if a guardian wants to subject you to inpatient mental health treatment, they have to go through a very difficult process to do that. So
good.
It would be very difficult for someone to force someone to be sterilized, get an abortion, get a divorce. It would be very difficult for those things. Now, I want to focus on the employment part because it drives me crazy that this woman was so incompetent, she could not make the decision to have a telephone, but they could work her full time
like an animal.
And she was so incompetent, she couldn't even enjoy the fruits of her labor. In Florida, if your right to employment is removed, your guardian cannot make you be employed.
They use this girl. This girl worked like an animola.
Yep.
I have never seen someone, you know what? They took advantage of her because you talk to the people closest in her inner circle. They say she never cared about the money. She just wanted to perform. She just likes to do this. They exploited her. I mean, this girl is supposedly not competent enough to choose her own lawyer, but you can let her work, 6 shows a week in Vegas, the kind of shows you have to play in Vegas for 4 years, y'all, 4 years, that's 16 shows a year. For 4 years, 200 something shows, and you think she's not competent enough to hire her own counsel to speak in her interest? Are you fucking kidding me?
Well, and it's not just the hire your own counsel, because I want to talk about that too, because that really, sticks in my craw as well. But it's not just that she couldn't hire her own counsel. They would not allow her to engage in social interactions. They would.
Some hillbilly daddy of hers finally showed up and bullied all the women in her life into letting him take control. I'm angry about this.
Yes. And so let's talk about the attorney thing. So again, this is a part where we are supposed to be different than California, although California may be making this change. In Florida, you are appointed a court-appointed attorney. That court-appointed attorney has to have at least 8 hours of guardianship training. Now, I know that doesn't guarantee
a day's worth. I agree,
but that was better than it used to be.
And I know it's a he.
Well, in our circuit, Dana, in the Second Judicial Circuit, it's about 50-50 actually. So, but the difference is you can substitute your own attorney. You can go out and find your own attorney. Now, here's the issue that comes up with that. I oftentimes get involved in cases where you have an elderly person who is being exploited, having some interloper or family member for that matter, taking their money and property that they need to live on. Sure. Well, if we have to initiate a guardianship, that the attorney is appointed. Oftentimes the bad actor puts them in the car, takes them to an attorney's office, and suddenly you have an attorney showing up to represent this person who really represents the bad actor.
Who is checking this? Who is the big brother on this? Who's checking this?
Honestly, the court is, but the court has
only if you bring it to their attention. That's the thing about people don't understand that it's a court. If you don't bring it to the court's attention, the court isn't just monitoring lives.
That is true. Now, in order for someone to come in and replace the court-appointed attorney, they actually have to file a motion, and the courts oftentimes hold a hearing because that's what's, how you transfer in. Now, in certain circumstances, you can show that this is an exploitive person. There's an actual couple of anti-guardianship organizations that are in our state who will intervene in guardianships to go and take, 85-year-old mom down to an attorney of their choosing to come in. And that's become a problem in some circuits. But one of the things that we have in Florida that many states don't have is that we treat this kind of like a criminal proceeding. Good. So you have the right to remain silent if you are alleged to be incapacitated. So you don't have to say a word.
Yeah, but you don't know how to exercise that because you are necessarily incapacitated.
Well, and I have had some clients who, to the best of my ability, I have counseled them on the right to remain silent, but they are going to tell that judge just how much they don't need a guardian, and then
because they are incapacitated.
Yeah, then it becomes very obvious that they need one. Now, my job, if I'm a court-appointed attorney, is to represent my client, not anybody else. And if my client tells me, now, under the rules that regulate attorneys, if my client can't communicate with me, I have to be able to do what's in their best interest. And there's some nuances in that, but generally that's it. But if my client can communicate with me, even if they lack capacity, I have to represent their interests. So I like to make this joke. If I'm representing, elderly woman who's being exploited and her daughter comes in and files a guardianship to stop it, and my client tells me that she'd really like Jeff Bezos to send her into space because that other 90-year-old got to go, sure. I have to call the daughter's attorney and say, hey, she'd really like to go to space. Is it a reasonable request? Probably not, but that's my job.
But she's heard.
But she's heard. It's not my job to do the best interest of her if she can tell me what she wants. I might not be able to go to court and prove that she doesn't need a guardian, but if she tells me to object to having a guardian, my job is to make that daughter's attorney put on that case and prove that
she does.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that happens in Florida that apparently doesn't happen in California is every year in Florida, once you have been adjudicated incapacitated and a guardian appointed for you, that guardian has to file an annual report identifying how they're taking care of you and how they have tried to have your capacity increased and whether or not you should be restored. Then they have to bring a doctor's note that says you're still incapacitated.
I love that.
Yes. So
it should be an ongoing burden. This is what bothered me. And now obviously we watched something on Netflix, not, a court file. We didn't read a trial transcript. But what bothered me was the entire reason she couldn't challenge this was because there was a temporal assessment of her mental well-being that some trial court continued to use as if it were relevant at the time of the challenge. And so I just thought to myself, that seems elementary. Any lawyer would know to challenge that on the most basic level. So how in the world could they allow one assessment snapshot in time? That's what I mean when I say temporal. It's a snapshot in time. You're not always anything. But at that point, she wasn't able to pick her own lawyer. But they kept using that as a basis for not allowing her to bring her own lawyer in to challenge this conservatorship. Do you know if that's a misstatement of the law, you know, because that made a very interesting documentary, or could that possibly be true, that someone would look at a snapshot in time and take that as your entire competency? I don't think so.
I don't know, honestly, because even in Florida, though, that kind of information is not public, and for a very good reason. We don't want to put out there what your mental illnesses are. We don't want to put out there if you wear Depends, that kind of stuff. So that all is sealed. But there are some things that, if she were in Florida, should have happened, and there's no excuse why they didn't. So I don't know if California law allows you to base guardianship for the rest of somebody's life on a snapshot done.
That's not rational.
Years ago. That's not right.
That would be true. I can't accept that.
I can't accept that either. Now in Florida, there is a process that any person, any interested person, including someone like Britney, can initiate to ask the court to revisit capacity. And that process is actually less stringent to come out of a guardianship than it is to get into one. So in Florida,
it should be. It should be. You should have to cross enormous hurdles to take someone's liberty. Yep. And you should absolutely have a ongoing burden to demonstrate that this restriction is necessary. Rose, yes. I'm looking at you, and I know that you and I have dealt with this so many times before. What are you thinking right now?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time when I've dealt with guardianships in my cases, it's been for minors, which is obviously a very different situation.
Necessary.
Money protected until they're an adult and can make their own decisions. But sometimes it is, you know, a child who is got a mental disability or something where we kind of think that they're probably not going to be able to make their own decisions once they age out and need to protect that money. And then sometimes it's a disabled adult. So what I'm wondering is kind of, we've talked about it a little bit, but what actually is the threshold for capacity, and how is that determined in Florida, since that's where we're talking about? But do you have to bring in a doctor? Is it the patient's like primary care doctor, or is it a outside doctor that comes in and makes that determination? How does all that work?
Okay, so every state has a different way. Some states you just merely have to bring in a doctor letter and flash it around. But in Florida, in Florida, and some states think, some of my colleagues in other states think that we have gone way overboard, but I think that this is at the very minimum what we should do. So you have to file a petition stating facts that show someone is incapacitated. So the vast majority of my guardianships are people who are elderly and, you know, they have lost it due to dementia, people with strokes, catastrophic injuries. So that's pretty easy to allege. But even then, once that is filed, the court appoints an attorney for them off that list, and they appoint 3 examining committee members. One of them is a physician, and 2 others are professionals that have to meet certain requirements in the statutes. Generally, they're a psychologist, they're social workers, there might be nurses. At least one person on that 3-person panel has to have knowledge of the alleged incapacity. So if you say somebody is mentally ill, one of those people must have knowledge of mental illness. And if I were representing the alleged incapacitated person, I would say of the specific mental illness. So if this person was alleged to have schizophrenia, do one of those people on that panel know about schizophrenia?
Okay. So
they then go do,
not that person's presentation of schizophrenia.
May I say this?
Yeah.
I worked at an inpatient psychiatric hospital when I was training. And one thing I took away from that was that you can present the same case, meaning a patient, meaning a human, to the same 2 doctors, 3 doctors, 4 doctors, and one can say they're schizoaffective, one can say they're bipolar. And that's deeply concerning to me. That tells me, it affirms what we all know, which is medicine is an art and a science.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not black and white. So it alarms me that one person would be given that sort of power.
Yeah.
One
well, in
person's
Florida, it's not one person, it's 3 people. So those 3 people all have to meet.
But who picks those 3
checks
people,
them
Twyla?
down.
Who picks the 3 people?
The court picks those people off of a list accumulated by the chief judge in the circuit of people who have to meet certain requirements. They also cannot have a connection to the person who petitions for incapacity, their attorney, the alleged incapacitated person, or the alleged incapacitated person's attorney. So if I represent someone who is a psychologist, I can't ask that that psychologist serve on incapacity cases that I file. I can't. So this is supposed to be an objective evaluation. We also, within our statute, have specific requirements for those evaluations. So the statute sets out that there are specific things that have to happen. There is a form that has to be completed. And these are people who have to have ongoing training. So it's not going to be, retired Nurse Betty who got bored in retirement and she was a NICU unit advisor, 20 years ago. It's going to be somebody who has been trained. They have to have ongoing education. And in places like the Second Circuit, our judge actually has encouraged mentoring between the older examining committee members to the younger examining committee members. So that evaluation can take anywhere from, if you have somebody who is basically comatose, an evaluation by that examining committee might take 45 minutes. If somebody can engage, it might take 3 hours. Right. So this isn't just sitting down and saying, oh, well, I look at the medical records and it looks like this, and so she's incapacitated. Even then, an alleged incapacitated person can challenge that and can present their own evidence. And so they can present evidence that they came on a bad day or that there were too many medications. There's a number of cases in Florida where an exam that was done, one time, 6 weeks later, the person has capacity because somebody looked and said, wow, they're taking 6 medications that cause dizziness, forgetfulness, and sleepiness. I wonder if
maybe that's the reason.
Maybe they didn't perform well on their exam that day.
So even with that report, you still can present evidence that it is not correct for whatever reason.
Gotcha.
But then,
I love it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But then once you get under guardianship, and I have a case where I have a spitfire of an elderly lady who is the warden of guardianship, and I represent her children. And about every 4 months, she, in her beautiful little handwriting, writes a letter to the judge that says, I don't need a guardian. And you know what that triggers in Florida? No. A review of her capacity. The court appoints an attorney, and the court appoints a doctor to evaluate her. Now, in that case, unfortunately, she still comes back as incapacitated. But
that's okay. It gets looked. Yeah. It gets looked at.
Mm-hmm.
That matters.
Yep.
I don't want people. This is what bothered me about the whole Britney thing in terms of what I received. I don't know how accurate it is, but if it is true, don't take a snapshot of me. I'm only me right now. That's just so wrong to take someone's liberty and their treasure and their everything, and then to work them like a dog. Gee whiz. Kia, what are you thinking as we wrap up today? We've got a little bit of time. We got about 20 minutes left. What are you thinking? What would you like to ask this honorable expert?
I think
Twyla Sketchley.
Twyla, you have now become one of my favorites, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, this whole situation even brought me back to thinking about the movie on Netflix called I Care a Lot.
Mm-hmm.
It had a lot to do with, they showed all of the weaknesses that were actually in the guardianship system. One of the things I wanted to ask you, which is what I saw on the movie, she used to call a lot of emergency hearings to where none of the elderly people could show up, and then they would get back to their houses and all of a sudden she is there to take them away. Does that commonly happen? But see, like I stated, she had come up with a whole system too. And I was so excited about the ending of that movie. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have felt that way. But
it's not, because there are people in Florida who are so disaffected because their parents were put under guardianship because of bad acts they did and their own mental illness, that I felt like it gave them license to commit violence against appropriately acting professional guardians. I had a real problem with that movie for that reason.
Right.
And I have been subjected to stalking and harassment by these groups. So, you know, there are people out there who should never be guardian of their parents because they have physically abused them, they've stolen their money and whatever. And because of this Free Britney movement and the I Care a Lot movie, the elected officials in our state, as well as other states, have given these people a forum to shout and a license to behave badly.
Right.
And there are people who have been terribly wronged by the guardianship system. Did you know in Florida that if you are 17 and a half in the foster care system and you have a developmental or intellectual disability, the system is encouraged to file a guardianship against you early?
Wow.
To do what? You already
Take away
are
your
not
rights.
providing what they need. So are you going to do it as when they're adults? What the hell do you want to keep them under your wing for? You're not caring for them now.
Well, and
What
they
the
don't,
hell?
but they don't, they're not keeping them under the state's wing. What they're trying to do is foist them off
Like someone
onto
responsible
our
for them.
offices of public guardian, which are underfunded. They are trying
Somebody's getting paid. Who's making money off of this?
Right.
Who's making money off?
Actually, the statute specifically says that attorneys should be doing this pro bono. It's usually going to the offices of public guardian. These people are generally being institutionalized because there really isn't a place for them. It's a terrible situation, but somebody a few years ago thought this was a great idea because what was happening is people with dual diagnosis, which means you have like a mental health and
An addiction plus a mental health problem.
They were having a hard time finding placement when these children turned 18, and they
had a hard time finding placement for perfect children when they turn 18 because
exactly.
they just dump you. They just dump you.
But this is a way for the foster care system to further dump these children, in my opinion. So just know that Florida is not perfect and Florida has some serious problems. Back to Kia's emergency question. This actually could have happened in Florida several years ago. That has actually been changed. So if there's an emergency, so let's say my client is the daughter finds her mother at home, she's had a stroke, she's fallen down, she's unconscious, and she finds out that the caregiver that was there has stolen all mom's money. Well, she may need that's a couple times a year that happens.
Every day.
But what happens is that daughter has to come in and act fast. So she files the incapacity petition and petition to be appointed guardian, but then she's got to wait 30, 60, sometimes 90 or 120 days in bigger counties to be her mom's guardian. So there is a statute that says if there's an emergency, that person can come in and apply, but you have to show imminent danger of mental and physical harm or loss.
That's subjective.
Well, but here's the other protections. So the individual has to have an attorney appointed for them. And that individual, unless the danger is so significant that the person would be harmed with notice, the alleged incapacitated person has to have notice. So in an instance, I've had cases where notifying the alleged incapacitated person would then alert the meth addicted son of the guardianship.
Counsel to do lawyer up. Yeah.
Well,
that's why,
not necessarily
it's a double trap.
But not necessarily lawyer up. In those kinds of cases, you don't worry. You want these people to lawyer up, honestly.
I usually do.
What you're worried about is someone who is so imbalanced that they will put mom in a car and disappear, or,
And then it's too late, This is what I want to ask you. These people are fiduciaries, correct?
Guardians are fiduciaries. Yes, they are.
What is that? What does that mean to be a fiduciary?
that means that you owe a duty of loyalty, confidence, and trust to the person you're acting on behalf of. You're supposed to be free of conflicts of interest, and you are supposed to, in Florida, in guardianship, do what they would have done if they were competent and had the opportunity, or what's in their best interest if you don't know.
Okay, well, what if you don't know what that is?
Okay, so this is the example I use with family members. You become guardian of 90-year-old grandpa. He's been smoking since he was 12. His doctor says he's got to stop smoking. He hasn't ever written down that he wants to be able to smoke in his incapacity, right? So we don't really have any written instructions about smoking. But when the doctor says grandpa needs to quit smoking, the guardian has two choices: force grandpa to quit smoking, right? Or determine what grandpa would have done. What would grandpa have done?
He would have kept killing himself. That's why he doesn't have capacity, because his choices have probably led to this. But I want him to stop smoking. So can I literally say, turn this man, put him into whatever the hell withdrawing from cigarettes is? Can I really do that? And can I do it because it's a judgment of my own? I just think it's distasteful. I don't like it.
No,
I don't want him to smoke. So throw him into DTs.
Legally, you're not allowed to do that. Now, that doesn't mean that people don't do it. And now you can't smoke. It's very difficult if you are in a facility to smoke, because they have to actually assign a person to go outside and stand there and smoke with you.
Yeah,
so
it's costly. You should pay more. You should pay more for your health care. You should pay more for everything. But is that really fair? Because are you the reason you're addicted? Is it your weak character? Or is it because of how you've been manipulated by people who have way more money than you do?
Exactly. And so what I tell guardians is, if you can find a way to allow grandpa to smoke, you have to let him smoke. Whether you think
but that's your best practices advice. Yes. What happens if someone says no, screw him?
Well,
he just DTs from nicotine or whatever the hell they want him to do, right? Once someone has control over you, your body, your person, plenary, meaning your money and your body, right? Is that what you said?
Yep.
Yeah. What happens when that happens? How do you get it back? How do you get it back?
You get it back through the suggestion of capacity. I go back to the example of my Spitfire little old lady, right? You know, she may regain capacity at some point. Probably not, because she suffers from an Alzheimer's type dementia, right? But she might. And when she does, she can go do all the terrible things that she wants to do to herself because she's competent. In the meantime, we can't let her, you know, she wants to live at home by herself, which is a big thing. They want to live at home by themselves. Well, if you can't cook without setting a fire, if you can't remember to eat or drink, if you can't get in and out of bed, or you can't remember to go to the bathroom, or you refuse to bathe, those are things that are physically harmful to you.
I get that, Twyla, 100%.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about this. I make bad money decisions. I mean, we could intervene with people all day long because they are being manipulated, taken advantage of. They just don't know. They're abusing substances such to where they could be organically incapacitated, but they are, you know, chemically, intentionally. You know what I'm saying? We could do this all damn day long. Now, what is the end? And I just don't like that it happened to Britney, because as we said, we glossed over it, but I want to spend some real time on this before we end. The sexism of this.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Kanye West loses his mind. Martin Lawrence in the middle of the damn traffic loses his damn mind. All these people.
Justin Bieber went crazy.
Into a girl, and we let her parents who robbed her of her damn childhood. Now we're gonna let them do this? That's so wrong.
No, I absolutely agree. And I go back to, we have always felt as a nation entitled to take ownership and possession of the female body.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying that to be controversial. If you look at our laws,
I don't give a shit why you say it.
Well, I know, but I, we today everything is controversial if you say something like that. But the reality is, if you look back, just look at healthcare. Did you know it wasn't until the late 80s, early 90s that we started regularly testing medications and procedures on women as standard studying?
Whole show on this.
Yes.
100%. No, they will put a drug on the market for women that has been tested 80-75% on men. Why are you talking to me?
The one
you should shut your mouth up.
Exactly. And think about this. There was years where if a woman came forward and said she was raped, people could sue her for slander, libel, and defamation unless she could somehow prove it.
Right.
You have to understand that for years, for hundreds of years, and for a couple hundred years, because we're not necessarily hundreds of years, women were not allowed to own property in our nation.
We were property.
We were property. That is exactly it. We were property. And if you look at the other side of the Britney thing, not only is it a female thing, it is a mental health disability thing.
Thank you.
We have always, even up until the 70s, had laws about keeping anybody with a disability out of sight. They were called the ugly laws.
Hide your ugly.
Hide your ugly. Women were regularly placed in Europe and the United States, placed in asylums for things like postpartum depression, arguing with your husband,
or being just about tired of his shit.
Yes, Dolly Parton has a fantastic song about the sexism of placing a woman in an asylum because her husband cheated on her and broke her spirit, and she had a nervous breakdown, and the woman was begging her father to come get her because her husband put her in an asylum and moved on.
Her father probably told her to get in line.
Well, and what's funny is that was in the 60s. Dolly Parton was an amazing feminist.
Oh,
that
she
song
still is.
she's the OG. But that's what we as a nation have always done to women.
Not.
And you look at what we've done to women of color. That's even worse. If Britney were a Black woman, we
no
would
one
not
would
care.
have a show about her.
Fighting about
You
this.
would not be
We
on the
wouldn't
show.
care.
We would not.
Nope.
Look at what we look. Who is the woman who was allowed to be married to R. Kelly? She's dead now. What is her name?
Oh, shit. I know who you're talking about.
Aaliyah, right?
Yeah. 14.
Yeah. And that's another thing.
Who was protecting her? She was a girl.
But here's the thing. Many states have had and still have laws on the books that if your parents can consent, you can get married at 12, 13, 14 years old.
No, we had a woman on Come Back Stronger.
Yes, you did.
Watch it. It's across North Florida. It's from Pensacola to Jacksonville. Watch it, y'all. She was married into that sort of situation, had 6 kids by the time she was 17 years old. Y'all, that is ridiculous.
And I got to tell your audience, you guys have got to see that.
In your church. Go ahead.
I was going to say, your audience needs to watch that episode with that woman. That woman is amazing. How survived and recovered.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, she is. Something like 6 kids by the time she graduated high school. Kept getting taken out of the school system. The thing they do to women, the hamstrings us the most, they rob us of our education.
Look what they did to Aretha Franklin.
Yeah,
somebody got her pregnant real young. Don't you tell me that.
That's how they control us.
And that's it. And that's the problem. This is not just sexism. This is a deep-rooted control over the body. And that's not controversial. It's just an extension of what has happened.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate it. I hate it. Twyla, Your energy has inspired me forever. I want to share a little personal story with Twyla. When I was a young lawyer, I'm not young at all. And I wasn't young when I was a lawyer, but young lawyer, meaning right out of the box. I referred her a case, and this woman that I referred to her turned out to be a royal pain in the ass. But Twyla understood it. She understood this woman was in an arena she wasn't prepared for. She was just so cool. But you know what she taught me as a young lawyer? She taught me boundaries. She taught me it was okay to say, I love you, I'm here for you, I'm your warrior in your fight, but you can't, I'm not accessible to you 100% of the time. You know, if it's an emergency, I'm here. But if you're just having a thought or an emotion that needs to be expressed, you've got to find some other way than calling your lawyer. And so I appreciate you, Twyla, and I really appreciate what you taught me as a young lawyer, and I appreciate all the good work you do for women everywhere. And you are a warrior. You are a Wonder Woman, and I'm so glad that I consider you on my team, and I hope you consider me on your team.
I do.
Love it. Love it. Let's go around the panel tonight. Let's end with Kia and then Rose. Kia, what are your wrap-up thoughts today?
I think one, I'm going to get Whitney's question in.
Okay, good.
What are your thoughts on the judges who apparently approved these outrageous orders on birth control, phone tapping, and forced isolation? And then I think we definitely have to expound on this topic. So Twyla, you may be coming back.
Yeah. What's the next show? But yeah, what kind of damn judge signs off on this?
Right. Now you have to understand, and there, you know, I like to point out that judges are not at a level of expertise that someone like me is, right?
Right.
So the judge or a social worker. So the judge can only rule on what's before him or her. Mm-hmm. So if somebody presents a petition that says Dana's abusing Kia and here's all the texts and whatever, it's an emergency, that judge may say, oh my, we do need, and they may enter an order. There may be I have never met a judge who has entered an order out of malice. I don't think so. Yeah, I've seen them enter orders because they rely on the attorneys to give them all the information, and either the attorney is misrepresenting the things, or they just don't know what they're doing, or they're doing it because they think something is so bad and the facts haven't been properly developed. So that's what I think of the judges. I don't think there's a giant conspiracy between lawyers and judges and guardians to make this all. I think that judges do what they're asked to do within the four corners of the document, and they can't go out and collect evidence. That's not their job.
That is true, Whitney. I feel your energy. I feel your vibe. Yeah. But what Twyla says is true. They can't go, even if they know you're someone shuffling heifer dust, they can't. It's not their role. They call balls and strikes. It's not their job to be advocates and to go out and collect evidence and present a case where if they were the person's attorney, it might go this way. I might handle it differently. That's not the role of a judge, but we like to think that's what the role of a judge is. We like to think that they protect us from bad lawyers or lawyers who don't have enough information. I'm not saying they're bad lawyers. Bad lawyering, which comes from not having the right information. So I get that. I appreciate Whitney's comment. I hear it 100%, but I also hear your response, Twyla, all that. Rose, as we close today, what are you thinking?
I was just kind of thinking about the whole Britney situation specifically. Like, she was in show business from the time she was a preteen. So she was kept in this different sheltered world by her parents, not taught how to be an adult by her parents. And now they're the ones who get to take advantage of her as an adult. Like Whitney had commented, and this was from the Netflix special, I think, that they wouldn't let her buy Skechers on her own.
Yeah.
They told
her.
That's
what I mean. How do you get
not
to
knowing that
how do you
they're a $40 pair of sneakers and you're a freaking millionaire?
Right.
And that's from them, from birth, keeping her in this condition. So you know, I know there's obviously a lot of legal battles have been fought in that case, but it just seems like the system, or maybe her parents specifically, really failed her in that regard. And
well, yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it makes me think, where were the interveners?
right, she
When
had
her
people
childhood
around her,
was
she had
being
managers, but they're all in the parents' pocket.
Now we have to remember, when we're talking about anybody age 18, parents have a constitutional right to raise their children the way they want.
Yeah, children don't have rights.
No,
Well,
but
and
stop for a
children-
minute. Not in Florida. Not in Florida. In Florida, you cannot do something that's against your kid's best interest, because of Florida, at least in Florida, we have a greater interest in your child than you do. So if you screw them up, we're going to come in and fix them. So to me, where was this concern for her? Now, I know she wasn't in Florida, she was in Louisiana, but you know what I'm saying? To me, it's just like, all of this time where you're conjuring this product that you know you're going to have, which is a young woman who is in no way prepared to deal with the reality that becomes her real life. You've robbed her for any sort of support, all that kind of stuff, and you profited from it. Let's be honest, you've made money off of her. So how can you now say that there's something derelict with her, there's something deficient with her, there's something wrong with her constitutionally that cannot be addressed, that cannot be mitigated, that cannot be fixed, and the only solution is that I have 100% control. When I had 100% control, I produced this.
Right.
To me, it's not rational.
And I like to say that, and I got this from a friend of mine who actually has a disability, and he likes to say that every person, regardless of their disability or status, should be given the opportunity and dignity to take the ill-fated midnight drive to Dairy Queen for ice cream.
There you go.
If you haven't been given that, your rights have been violated.
But you know, I just hate that it's taken this long. But here's the thing, here's the power of social media. I don't know why some lawyer could not have intervened. I would have said, listen, yeah, she wasn't competent then, let's have another reevaluation, or I will blow your shit up on media right now today.
Well, there's only certain people can come in.
13 years.
Yeah, only certain people are allowed to come into these guardianships. And there's a good reason for that, because if you let every Tom, Dick, or Harry, or Bob and Jane off the street come in, oh my, the costs are going to go through the roof.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Again, we could talk forever. No, thank you, Twyla Sketchley.
You're welcome.
For coming in today. And again, thank you for teaching me boundaries and respect for myself and my worth as a young lawyer. You are a hero to me. You've been inspirational to me, and I hope I've never abused that privilege again by referring you a monster. No, she wasn't a monster, like they always are. They're people who are burdened with more than they have the capacity to handle.
Yes, and they are not incapacitated. And they are not incapacitated.
Use your privileges though, or your boundaries. And so thank you for teaching me that, Twyla. You're everything. Thank you for being here today, Kia. Free Britney, hashtag free Britney every day, every hashtag, every time. Thank you for Rose for not making me crazier than I could be about this topic, because you know, as weird as you are about it, I'm weirder. I hate
we can fight over that title.
Right.
Oh my God, I hate it. No, y'all, thank you so much for joining us again for another episode of the EmPower Hour, brought to you by the EmPower Plant. We will see you next Thursday at 4:30, Facebook Live. And if you ever want to know anything else about it, or talk to somebody, or just get some information, call us, call Twyla Sketchley, particularly about this thing, but always come to us at Facebook.com. How hilarious. I'm so tired of trying to differentiate facebookbrooks.com from Facebook.com. It's my world I live in. Y'all just, you know how to reach me. Get a hold of us, and we will get you in touch with the brilliant Twyla Sketchley and all the other people that we have on every week who are experts in their field. Thank you for watching us, and we will join you again next week. Y'all have a great
time. Thank you, ladies. Have a wonderful weekend.
You too, Twyla.
Thank you, Twyla.